Good morning, everyone. Thank you, or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Welcome. I want to welcome you to our webinar. We are with Justin DeWind, Gaggle's CTO. And the focus of today's conversation is really looking at the technology roadmap, what's next at Gaggle. But we want to be thinking or really discussing what Justin's thinking about, what the team's focused on, what the big picture items are. And so our conversation today is going to center around really what's happening at Gaggle, what's next, what's the new cool latest greatest thing. So I want to take a minute to introduce him. Justin is a wonderful CTO. He's been at Gaggle for 2+ years now, right?
Yep.
And in that time has made some significant changes on the dev side. Before Gaggle, he has 20 years in software engineering. He's got a breadth of experience working in ed tech, health tech, mental health, all kinds of areas around education. One really nice thing about Justin is that he has experience in education as his wife is an educator. And so he really does a good job of blending the startup agility with enterprise thinking and a client focus. And so I'm happy to have you here with me today. My name is Maura Deptula. I'm the director of marketing. I failed to introduce myself, but hopefully I've given you a good solid introduction, and I'll turn things over to you, but I want to keep this an open dialogue so we can go back and forth a little bit today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Maura. Appreciate the introduction. And I hope everyone's staying warm too. I think like most of the country is having snow, which is, a little unusual for those people in the South, so everyone stays safe. So anyways, yeah, we'll get started. The K through 12 technology hot topics, and there's a lot of crossover. We're seeing this not just in ed tech, but I'd say across the board with a few key differences, I think, within education. Like cybersecurity continues to be a major focus, especially we've kind of seen the environment of certain data breaches with some large technology vendors, and there is an increased focus on cybersecurity, which ties into student data privacy. There's always that fine line of, what are the rights and privacy of the student, but how do we also make sure they're safe and productive and have access to the tools that they need to have, but also make sure they're not getting to things they shouldn't have and put them in danger. Funding is a major thing. We see consolidation across the board with vendors and technology. There's also a lot of emergent products coming out too, and everyone's trying to say, what do I buy? How do I consolidate? I don't want 50 million licenses to deal with, and we also know budgets are constrained. And lastly, and this is what everyone's dealing with, is it's sort of like the new internet. It's the emerging AI technology, which is a bit of a buzzword, but there is an emergence of tons of tools and resources. And, we're seeing an increase in access to these things. And this we're sort of on the next horizon of technology innovation. And we know that's impacting our districts as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And these continue to be top of mind considerations and concerns for district leaders,
Yeah.
especially technology leaders. I do think there's one that stands out at this moment as kind of an interesting topic, and I want to steer the conversation in that
Yeah.
direction. That is really, let's talk about AI. Let's talk about this new, exciting, scary, tumultuous technology that we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, AI is the new frontier for technology, and I think it sort of started with, hey, I can search for things a little easier. I can have it write things for me, and kind of act as sort of like a shadow in your day-to-day job. But I think it's becoming a far more immersive technology, and from software development all the way to productivity tools. Um, as many mistakes as it can make, and how early on in the process we were kind of like had our doubts about it. What we're finding is that the industry is moving so fast that inevitably this is going to be where I think people are going to have to work and become familiar with. But we also have to be cognizant of the pros and the cons and the challenges that really come with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's we saw it with horses to cars and the dawn of the internet, and this is a very similar pattern that we're following. So I I think let's start with the really good stuff. Let's start with the
Yeah.
exciting, powerful,
Yeah.
kind of best vision of how it
I mean,
would
as
be.
someone that's been married to a teacher for almost as many years as I've been working in technology, I can tell you things like personalized learning. If you're an educator, that there's a lot of effort that goes into that. There's a lot of things you have to do to try to provide learning on a student by student basis. And frankly, a lot of students get lost in the mix because it's just you have to index on the students that need the most help or having the most trouble. And now with the introduction of AI, you can focus on and expand on your access to personalized learning, getting real-time feedback from students and your technology and what you're doing. We're seeing this in LMSs and other products that are coming out. You can drive engagement, which kind of goes back to like targeting, your users, your personas, your students to make sure that you're learning with them in the right way. Future focused learning and efficiency for teachers, of course, like the one thing that, a lot of teachers deal with, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call are, unfunded mandates, things that teachers and educators have to do as a part of, whether it's state policy, local policy, federal policy, there's things they have to do that are inclusive of their job, and their to-do list is always ever expanding. And AI can be a tool, and I think tool is the right word, to increase the efficiency and throughput of teachers so they can focus on what they love to do, which is teaching and educating. And lastly, this is always true of any emergent technology. The access to data, the ability to inspect data, analyze it, do things. We see this even at Gaggle. Um, you know, Prior to new tools coming out with related to analytics and insights. It used to be a large business analytics operation or B operation to query something, and it would take weeks, maybe lead time would be months. Now we can simply say, "Hey, I'm going to import this data set. I'm going to ask questions about it," and you have to be, cognizant of how you ask those questions, but your ability to learn quickly using data is just an order of magnitude increase we've seen over the last 2 years.
Yeah. There really is some exponential power in the classroom, in data, in all areas when we apply AI technology. I we always talk about like that teachable moment, like getting to the kid to that teachable moment. And it's just
Yes.
exciting to think that there might be something that can get you there quick and efficiently with real impact. So I'm going to try and launch a short survey tool for those of you in the, let's make sure I can do this. All right. So there should be a poll appearing on your screen.
I
And
see it.
we want to do a quick survey of the group to understand where do you fall when it comes to AI? We've just given you the kind of best case scenario, if you will, but where do you fall when it comes to embracing this with your students? And not to go too far into the stoplight here, but really, where do you stand? Are you like green light, let's go, full speed ahead? Are you a little tentative? Maybe we dip our toe in the water, or have you had experiences that maybe said made you say no way, let's stop, let's put a pin in this, maybe next school year, let's let's just not, this isn't for kids, or it's not ready, or what have you. And then the other question that we're wondering about is really, what tools are you currently using? So we put a list together of things we think you may be using, even if you are just dipping your toe in the water. But we're curious to understand what those tools are. So I can see that about this is quite a good tool, I have to say. 70% of our participants have responded so far, Justin.
Yeah,
So we're waiting on just that lagging that lagging 20, we're down to 26%. So I'll give you another 15 seconds to
sure.
answer our
Yeah,
survey if you haven't done
no
so.
rush. There's no wrong answer either, too. So,
No, and this is really just our general curiosity to kind of validate where we think you might be landing. So,
awesome.
all right, I'm gonna end the poll now, and I'll tell you the results if it doesn't show them on the screen. I think it might show them. Most of our participants fall into the we can try a little. So let me share these results.
Yeah.
Um, So there's a couple folks that are in the no way camp, which I can appreciate because um, I have those sentiments. There's a good number, I would say. What does it look like? About a third of
Yep.
participants are like, "Let's go. This is the new thing. Let's dig in." And then half of the crew is here in this. We can try a little, which I think is that middle ground.
Yeah.
And it looks like Gemini appears to be our leading tool. Canva not far behind, and Notebook LM.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Yep. But there's adoption around a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for participating. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Gives me
Uh,
a lot of interesting insight.
yes, absolutely. Another way to collect data.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk
Yeah.
about so we have on the one end the
Yeah.
transformative nature, the exciting
Yes.
part of AI, but
Yep.
let's start balancing this a little bit.
Yeah. So I think the poll is actually a good representation of kind of how people are thinking about it. It's
Mhm.
a new and interesting tool. It has a lot of benefits, a lot of things that it can provide for you. And at the same time, it's an emergent technology. We're kind of going from the early adoption curve, kind of getting it as a mainstream adoption. We'll say a lot, some of us are in the early majority, and then you're kind of going to see what shakes out. And the one thing about early emergent technologies is, and this is, the state of the industry in general, it's a focus on getting things out the door where things like regulations, compliance, privacy, security kind of take a they're secondary to that. And we also know that with districts, you have a lot of things that you have to do with respect to keeping kids safe, SIPA compliance, and I know this to be true because we want to look at it, is like for Gemini, your ability to look at and see what's going on with these tools is very limited. And so we also understand that having intentionality around it and wanting to move forward, but in a way that keeps your districts productive, your students productive and safe is really important. So that middle ground makes a lot of sense in that case because you have a lot of people you're responsible for. So I think intentional adoption is key for districts.
Yeah, I want to highlight one thing you said because it brought to mind for me the idea of lagging safety. So we had cars, there were cars before there were
Yes.
seat belts. And so I
Correct.
think, the parallel here is really that there was AI before there was safety. And so it
Yes.
tends to be just a scotch behind.
Yes. All right, let's talk about this. So, speaking of that, and this is just one day too. Like I think I did a quick check, and I think we've identified another like 100 of these kinds of sites. So, one of the great thing about AI is that things are emergent and fast moving, and things go out the door. Well, that happens on the other side of the spectrum, where you have bad actors, or I would say tools that are immoral or not okay, that are also being produced at a high clip. And so, one of the investments we made at Gaggle is we took all that work we've done for safety and really invested it into our real-time web filter. And we're noticing an emergent pattern, which is to be expected, where we're seeing AI being used, for bad. And so in this one day, we had 13 websites that were dedicated to generating deep fake nudes, which I think was an emergent function of what we've seen in Grok, which has been doing this for a year now, generating these deep fakes, and our real-time web filter was able to block these and prevent students from accessing them almost like within seconds of the student accessing those. And we will see, I think we'll continue to see this as an emergent trend, not just with this kind of content, but in content in general, because the flip side of AI is that you can create lots of bad content quickly. And this is just one example of that.
Yeah, and this is an instance too where it was out there and then it was caught. And now for any future users of the web filter, this will already be protected.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
that benefit of the student visiting it, I guess if there is a benefit, is now we get to catch it and we distribute that benefit of blocking it for all of our districts.
yeah. But it's just all moving very fast.
So going to embracing AI intentionally. Now Gaggle has always dealt with safety related incidents, possible student situations, questionable content, and whether it was in a Google Doc or OneDrive or a chat or maybe something you've done on the web. That's always been around, but we are seeing some trends where we're seeing students actively engaging with AI chatbots. And these chatbots, the reason that they can be a challenge is that they engage with you in a way that mirrors your behavior. They can have bias, and they can provide what seems like good advice that is not good advice. And so we have seen an increase in alerts coming from ChatGPT, Character.ai, which is a very popular tool and is not well regulated at all. And there's not really any guardrails on that. Um, and a handful of other things. With respect to the relative rankings, I think this is not too dissimilar to what we see in other modalities, sexual content, suicide, and violence. But we have had to address active incidents where a student's safety was at threat or another student's safety. So we are seeing an emergence of AI, being involved in safety-related incidents.
Mhm. I think it's important to know, and thinking back on the web filter sites that were blocked,
Yeah.
we as adults leading districts, we grew
Yeah.
up in a different time and we're doing our best to keep kids safe, to prevent them from getting to these sites. But there's quite a number of instances we've uncovered where kids are getting to places districts never thought they could or would.
Yeah, yeah, the surface area is just increasing constantly, which is why, traditional web filtering approaches are going to have a hard time keeping up. And so I think, Gaggle's approach is students are going to get to these things. How do we, in near real time, understand what they're doing and make sure that we can keep them safe and productive, as opposed to trying to create this impervious vault or moat around them, which we don't think is really possible in this new age.
Yeah, I think that's important to know.
Yeah. Um, So going further, so Gaggle has used AI for a very, very long time. We have a dedicated machine learning team that has done a lot of work to make sure we can identify the right kind of content, make sure it gets to our safety team as quickly as possible, and ensure that we're catching the right context from the document to make sure it's an actionable incident. And we continue to do this. So, for example, Gaggle has recently adopted an approach where rather than just using a combination of keywords and some machine learning algorithms, we're evaluating the full context of the document to understand what is the student really trying to tell us without over-indexing on certain kinds of words, but understanding the intent of what the student is writing.
Mhm. And I have an example of that. I'm going to actually go back
Sure.
forward if you don't mind,
No
because
problem.
this is a example that we pulled. We are using the model in practice and have
Yes.
tested it. And so you can see here in the context in this text, there's nothing that would inherently draw your eye as a concerning word or phrase. Um, but when you read it, you can clearly see that this is a person in a tremendous amount of pain
Yeah.
who really needs
Yeah.
support, intervention, someone to come along and kind of pull them out.
Yeah, humans are really good at nuance and emotional context, and that's something that computers have historically been very bad at. And it's kind of we've needed human beings, but we're getting to the point where we can draw out the emotional context within the message to know that okay, this student really is in crisis.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that that's an incredibly powerful aspect. So let me just go back to that. You brought this up when we
Yeah,
were talking on the last slide, really looking at AI chatbot and chatbot adoption. And these are some statistics that we pulled from our friends at Common Sense Media that illustrate just how many
yeah.
teenagers and youth are engaged in AI chats every day.
And I think the key word here is companion style. I think the way that, I'll say that I'm kind of getting older. So my temptation is to always kind of like, hey, you do this for me, you do this for me, and kind of engage it as if it's a tool that will, provide information, maybe do some work for me. Teenagers will engage it in a much more personal level and as if it's like a partner with them or a peer. And their use is different. We have to be cognizant of that as well. Sometimes we kind of index on how we use it, but the younger demographics are using it differently than we are as well, which we're seeing in this, but also I think in some of the data we see in our safety data as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure it could feel as a trusted space. If you don't have a trusted adult accessible to you, it could be private. You get a
Yeah,
sense of privacy and you can ask those questions you've been wondering about. So it's not surprising, but I do think when we look at the number of students participating in this activity, that's when it really drives home
yeah,
how pervasive it is. So you touched on AI innovation at
yep,
Gaggle. We looked at the full context sample because I think that's important.
yeah.
But what else do you want to talk about in terms of innovation? Do you want to talk a little bit more about the web filter? Or you carry it away.
Sure. Yeah. So, at Gaggle, there's probably we're trying to make sure like AI always says like, AI is a tool. We don't want to create AI things for the sake of AI, right? And so I kind of always like what I like to say. So really real-time web filtering will continue to be something we invest in. We think that's sort of the first area that we can, one, keep students safe. Also, it's a way for us to potentially teach self-regulation. Sometimes what they're engaging in isn't necessarily dangerous to them, but it might be unproductive or not at the right time. And so we think there's lots of things we can do there. Additionally, we know districts want to embrace AI intentionally, but we also know that the governance around it is difficult, right? You kind of can use your filter to maybe track tools and what they're using, and you might be able to get some web activity monitoring on if they're engaging in activities that are not compliant or have there's a safety issue. But we also think there's things we can do to sort of say, what is the intent of the user or student? What are they trying to do? Is it casual use? Is it for learning or academics? Is it a safety related issue or something else? And allow districts to really see what their students are doing so that they can feel confident in how they deliver AI. And then, of course, from a safety perspective, you know, the huge benefit of large language models or what we call AI is that we can really engage and understand the context of where the student is, what they're doing, and we can almost, at scale, provide a level of human nuance that was otherwise not possible, which allows us to monitor the population of Gaggle students that much more effective than we were. So Gaggle will certainly be engaging with AI and innovation, but we're going to try to make sure that we're intentional about it and that we're solving the problems our districts need us to solve, as opposed to, I'll put it this way, giving you another summarize this article tool. That's not our goal at Gaggle, even though there might be a purpose.
I always laugh when the text messages or emails are summarized in such a peculiar way that it's not the tone
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
writer. I think about YouTube. I put the YouTube logo on this slide in part
Yeah.
because I think about YouTube in
Oh, yeah.
in both in terms of my learning, like if I'm doing a DIY home project, I know there's a video on how to do the crown
Yep.
molding or what have you. Um, there is so much wealth on YouTube
Yes.
for learning. And we live in an age where kids can learn the answer. When we were kids, Justin, not to date you too much, there were things we couldn't know. We just
True.
couldn't know. You'd have to get a ride to the library, look in the encyclopedia, and it might be out of date and you wouldn't know the real answer. That is not the experience of learners today. They can learn everything. And so I think it's amazing. It's the best time to be
Yes.
alive. You have a boundless curiosity that you can satisfy. And so YouTube is one of those areas where
Yeah.
you get a new game that you want to learn to play. you
Yep.
you know you have a new challenge. There are experts who've recorded the answers for you.
Yeah.
That being said, just like these deep fakes, just like all these other
Yep.
areas. And so I think that's a huge challenge for districts. How do you keep those resources alive
Yeah.
without bringing harm?
Yeah, it's a great question. YouTube, without a doubt, like you said, an amazing resource, and Google tries to do its best to make sure that its content is safe and regulated, and they generally do a good job of kind of what I would say is taking the worst of the worst out of their content. But as you know, there's always sort of like subtleties, value decisions. Like it's not appropriate, but I probably don't want my students to look at this, or it might bypass their filtering mechanisms they have built in Google. And so, like I just used like like I feel like they're learning math in different ways. All the time, so I used YouTube to go over the way my son is learning math. I'm like, okay, that's how they're doing that. Okay, I did this way when I was a kid, but okay, and that's all good and fine. And even I use it, and he uses it as a resource. But at the same time, there is a lot of content that, while we don't think it puts the student in explicit danger or isn't explicitly bad for them, is not appropriate for school use, or is walking that line. We're like, it's probably not okay. And so one thing we've brought with our real-time web filtering is we evaluate every YouTube URL in real time. And if we've seen it, we'll apply the category and content rating that we know. Let's say it's a game and we give it a rating of TVG because it's like, I don't know, Geometry Dash, which my kids love. Or we'll say it's a game and it's TV mature because it's Call of Duty and they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing in the YouTube video. And we'll block that in real time because what we want to do is make sure that you don't have to put a ton of constraints around YouTube access because there's no way you're going to be able to keep up with all the emergent content for learning. And so we're going to say, hey, you know what? Go to YouTube and we'll make sure that we have your back. And as they go to these videos, we will block or warn in real time based on the kind of content it is and the rating that we give it. And as an example, over the last week, I think we've categorized and rated, I think, over 50,000 YouTube videos in just a week, across multiple categories, and we'll continue to do it. And most of the time, students, they're fine. They can look at it. It's just those handful of times that we're there to help intercede. It's a great question, Maura.
Yeah, no, that's just something I think is really incredible and powerful. So I want to kind of wrap us up today. I appreciate your time and being with us. I think it's a really interesting conversation. There have been a few folks who have been, I believe, trying to chat some questions. And so if you do have a burning question, I think we'll have a minute or two to answer it.
Yeah,
But in
good.
as they're writing questions, would you just talk a little bit more broadly? I know we focus deeply on AI, and that is
Yeah,
a hot topic of the moment, but just
yep.
a little more broadly on the focus this year in development at Gaggle.
Yeah. Again, I think I stated this. We want to meaningfully support districts' journeys through adopting AI tools. You can't, we're not gonna. It's here to stay, right? Whether you like it or not, it's here to stay. So we want to be able to provide governance and insights on the kind of tool usage that's happening in the district. We continue to want to make sure that our incidents are accessible, actionable, and useful. We think there's a lot of interesting things that we can do on our roadmap to continue to make sure that everything we put in front of you is something you should and can take action on, but also give you more insights into what that incident is and what's going on with that incident. Um, we're going to continue to do more flexibility and control with our web filter deployments. Every district is a journey. Like some have iPads, Mac OS, Windows. They have different MDMs. We want to make sure we get that full coverage for all of our districts because we really believe in our dynamic and real-time web filter. We think it's how the future of web filtering will be. And so, on top of that, we'll continue to improve, modernize, and mature our web filter product. So that way, we have a couple minutes for questions. I want to make sure we leave some time for them if we can.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So the first question for you, and I'm curious to hear your
Yeah.
response to this too. What do you view as the biggest challenge or biggest concern as you look at ed tech development this coming year?
Just in general
Like
for
what
that
keeps
tech.
you up at night, I guess, is the essence
Yeah.
of it, Justin.
Um, the thing that I always think about is that districts are always introduced with a million different solutions to their problem, and they're trying to find ways to consolidate that. And I really need to figure out how Gaggle fits into that so that we can, be your safety solution, but also do more than just that, because I think consolidation is a major factor. And I also think, lastly, one of the biggest thing is making sure as we're going down, this journey with AI, that we're picking the right problems to solve. I'm always worried that we're going to do something just because it's the thing we think is the hot topic. And I want to make sure we're very intentional about, what we solve for. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be budgetary constraints and consolidation in ed tech. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge we'll face.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great
Yeah.
answer. And I think it's true.
Yeah.
One more question, and
Yeah.
this one's kind of fun. What is your favorite AI tool?
So it's a pretty easy answer for me. For me, it's Anthropic Claude. I think it's the best enterprise development friendly. platform out there. I think it also has the most guardrails. It provides the most reasonable insights. It doesn't hallucinate as much. I don't know if it's the best overall productivity tool for AI, but Claude far and away is the favorite. And as you know, all of our developers adopt and use Claude internally for their development activities. So that's kind of our go-to at Gaggle. It's
That's
Anthropic.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Thank you, Justin, for being here and sharing with us. I hope that everyone feels this was a great use of time. I know I do. And I appreciate your time and attention. We'll see you on our next webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.